What did you think of your 3 free classes? Do you think you'll sign up?
I don't think so. I just don't think this is my kind of place.
Really? You did really well in sparring. I think you could progress quickly here.
This just isn't my style. I prefer things that are a little more defensive. I don't want to start a fight.
Well, consider if you're at a bar and a brawl breaks out.
That's just one of several reasons I don't hang out in bars.
Where do you go to have a drink with your buddies?
Well, I'm a teetotaler and so are most of my friends. But when I had a friend that did want to, we usually went to a restaurant where I could get some food.
What if you're trying to pick up a girl?
I prefer girls that don't drink much. I do alright without having to get them drunk first.
Yeah, but what if you and a buddy decided to go to a bar just for a night, and someone took a swing at your buddy?
Why are we at a bar? And why did he get in the fight?
Let's say he saw a girl and followed her in, and then her boyfriend got upset.
So he was a creep and started following some random, possibly drunk girl into a bar, found out she had a boyfriend, and then kept going? He got himself into this mess. I'll wait in the car. Best of luck. Don't take too long if I drove, I might just leave him there.
You'd leave your buddy in a fight?
Once he turned into a creep that couldn't take a hint, he stopped being my buddy. I'm not so hard up to find friends that I need that in my life. I taught Kung Fu for about 15 years. I studied Kung Fu for 20 years before that. In that time, I met quite a number of very skilled, talented, experienced, and thoughtful martial artists. You learn things when you learn to fight. You learn that it's really hard to tell the difference between a good fighter and a poor fighter until you actually fight them. You also learn that some people are much more sure of their skills or much more willing to inflict harm than their actual abilities warrant. Unarmed martial arts and martial arts with classical weapons, swords, staves, spears, etc., come from a time before Newtonian mechanics. A lot of what was attributed to Chi 400 years ago, we now know is the result of applying leverage and balance. This means there's not a lot of peer review of martial arts concepts. Martial arts teachers will often build a self-defense curriculum or a fighting curriculum based almost entirely on their own experience and intuition. This has changed some in the last 50 years. HEMA is primarily a documentation-based martial arts group, for example. And with the furthering of naturalism and MMA, the people who make a name for themselves with their magic chi powers, or techniques that are too deadly for the ring, have been finding it harder and harder to sell their snake oil. This isn't to say that some real things in martial arts don't feel magical. When I tested for my 3rd-degree black belt, I had been disconnected from my instructor for a while, and he had been separated from his grandmaster for a while before that. There were parts of the curriculum that I didn't know, and I accepted that. But I was challenging for the grading committee because when it came to sparring, I was definitely in my element among the 3rd and 4th-degree black belts. There were only a few 3rd-degree black belts that were beating me, and most of the 4th-degree black belts found me challenging. Not the 5th-degree black belts, though. I remember distinctly bowing into a light contact sparring match with a 6th-degree black belt, taking fighting postures, hearing, "Go!" and nearly simultaneously feeling contact against my lower right side. To this day, I don't know if it was his hand or his foot. He was that fast and had my openings figured out that well. On another occasion, when I was a green belt, I remember lining up with someone who already had their black belt at another school and just wanted to add our style to his list. We talked about various concepts, among them one called range control. He told me that with well-executed range control and a little psychology, he could win some fights without even touching the other person. To demonstrate, we set up to spar. He got into my head moving forward and back and forcing me to focus on him, and after about 10 minutes, I actually walked into a wall. When I asked why he doesn't fight like that all the time, His answer was simple. It's exhausting. Over the years, I've managed to do similar things with lower experienced fighters twice, and yes, I concur. I have to move 3 times as much as they do and stay 4 times as focused, and if they just do something as simple as take a step back and stop fighting for a second at the wrong time, I start over from scratch. So it's not an effective way to fight, even if it does make a fun parlor trick when someone is questioning if the teacher is really any good. Being able to say, you know what, let's spar, but I'm going to win by making you step out of bounds 3 times. And then doing it without touching them changes the way your students look at you. But somehow, despite the ascendancy of naturalism, pacifism, and MMA, some of the magicians, strong men, and untouchable masters continue to rope in enough devoted followers to have all the money, women, and influence that they could ever want. Which is how I know I'm doing it wrong. My income is fine, I'm satisfied with my wife, and I don't need a lot of influence to be happy, but I can definitely imagine my life with more of each category, and that imaginary version of myself always seems more satisfied. I certainly don't turn down money or influence when offered. About 10 years ago, I was introduced to enter the dojo. It was described to me as The Office, but for martial arts. Since I have never watched The Office, I can't speak to that analogy, but I immediately fell in love with the concept. It is a martial arts school run by the ultimate magician, strongman, and untouchable master simply named Ken, who has created his own street fighting style called the Maridute. However, the only proper way to interpret the teachings of this style is to understand that everything Master Ken says is wrong. He sincerely believes everything he says, and says everything with enough authority and conviction that it sounds convincing unless you know what's right, but he's wrong anyway. Ken is created and played by actor Matthew Page, who has martial arts experience. He has to in order to write the lines for Master Ken. It's impossible to get that much wrong by accident. Every single thing that Ken says and does is wrong. In the original filmed episodes, Master Ken would even be called out on contradictions in what he says by his students, but his impenetrable ignorance always found a solution. Sometimes, I wish there could be a show like this for Christianity. There are 2 closely related reasons why there can't be, though. First and foremost, the reason Master Ken is funny is because he's always wrong. Those of us with an enlightenment view of reality, and even a few years in the martial arts, know you can't break boards just by looking at them, and that not every shot should be directed at your opponent's groins. Even if someone were to fall prey to one or the other of these false teachings, they are likely to recognize that the other is problematic for all the right reasons. No one gets everything wrong, but Master Ken works really hard at it. In Christianity, though, there's very little consensus about what it means to be wrong without being deceptive. It's easy to point to people that we think have it wrong, but to the majority of people it's still their truth, and therefore okay. We can point to people we think are abusing their spiritual position, but most often we don't think they believe the snake oil they're peddling. So if we had a sincere but daft progressive reformed preterist annihilationist, this is going to offend too many people. Likewise, if we had a conservative open theist mid-trib conditionalist. These kinds of jokes are always funnier if they're played by someone on the inside who is making the point. We aren't actually like this, even if that's what gets all the clicks on TikTok. Dilbert is funny because Scott Adams knows how engineers work and what problems they run into in their job. Master Ken is funny because he knows what really works in martial arts. The problem with religion in the current cultural climate is that someone on the inside will either be actually preaching what they believe or making fun of another sincere, honest, honorable group of Christian siblings. Neither is funny. The other reason something like this wouldn't work is that the general lay-level understanding of theology is so low that vanishingly few people would know where the jokes are. When Master Ken fails to break boards by staring at them because his student gets distracted, Most of us know that this is because it's actually the student breaking the board. It's only a very few that are offended because they think their teacher actually did that. But if a teacher wrongly explains the Trinity or plenary inspiration, very few people will know what they got wrong. Lutheran satire does the best with this kind of thing that I've seen, but they have to make explaining the joke part of the joke for it to make sense. How would you make a satire of the church from the inside? I would love to hear ideas for something like that.